I'm going to be talking about affirmative action. Basically, what affirmative action is policies that take into consideration factors such as race and gender in order to benefit minority groups. Specifically, my main claim is affirmative action in education is ineffective and unequal. I'm going to be talking about affirmative action results in reverse discrimination. A merit system of admission would provide the strongest prepared candidates, and affirmative action is demeaning to all students. My first point, affirmative action results in reverse discrimination. It does this because by giving minority groups an advantage, you are disadvantaging the majority groups. Such is so with the case of the Supreme Court case of Regents of the University of California v. Bake of 1978. What the case basically was a student named Bake, who was 32 years old, applied to the UC Davis Medical School of Medicine in 1973 and 1974. But however, the thing is that he didn't get accepted on both years. He didn't get accepted. But what caused controversy was that his GPA was 3.5, but there was students that had lower GPAs that were getting into the program because they were of minority. So what the Supreme Court, the decision was that basically that he can get into the school and that it was unconstitutional to use the quota system for admitting the students. And so that basically ties in that is reverse discrimination. My second point was a merit system of admission would provide the strongest prepared candidates. It should be based on grades and valor rather than race and gender. This was brought up with Proposition 209, which happened which was passed in 1996 in the state of California. Basically, what Proposition 209 is that it made affirmative action illegal in the jobs and education system. And so it couldn't happen. And people who opposed it argued that the minorities would be less in schools, there would be less minorities in the higher education system. However, there's 2 points I want to bring up that counter this claim. After Proposition 209 passed in California, minorities in UCR and UC Santa Cruz increased dramatically. And another point is that UCLA law professor Richard Sanders notes that from the statistics that black students at UC San Diego had a 4-year graduation rate of 26% before Proposition 209. And after Proposition 209, 52% rate graduated. So not only did Proposition 209 take up affirmative action, but it actually did what many people didn't think it would do, raise minorities' graduation rates. Because instead of allowing people who were of race, this race, that race, they allowed people who qualified to go to that school. My third point is that affirmative action is demeaning to all students. This was brought up actually recently by UC Berkeley. A few Republican students did a bake sale. And what this bake sale basically did was they sold cupcakes, and but at different price ranges. They decided to sell the cupcakes to white people for $2, for Asians $1.50, Latinos $1, and 75 cents for blacks, and 50 cents for Native Americans. And on top of that, if you were a woman, it was 25 cents less for that. Basically, what they were arguing was that's what affirmative action does. It is demeaning to students who of race, or of any race, because just because they're a certain race, then you get it more expensive or less expensive. And that's basically what they were trying to prove, that affirmative action is wrong. So basically, what I talked to you about is that affirmative action results in reverse discrimination through the Supreme Court case of University of California v. Bake of 1978. And I talked to you about how the merit system admission would provide the strongest prepared candidates to the higher education system, and affirmative action is demeaning to all kinds of students, whether what race you are or gender that you are. And thank you.
All right, the background on the subject needs to be a little bit more complete, because the first question that comes into my mind, if they've got rid of quotas and Prop 209 in California eliminates the ability to utilize this kind of information, what are you talking about? What is left that constitutes affirmative action that could produce this result? Otherwise, it sounds like you're making an argument about the past instead of one about what's going on currently. You identify your proposition pretty clearly. It does have one part that is value-based at the beginning, and it's also divided into two parts in the proposition. That's a little bit difficult. The secondary issues are pretty clearly laid out, so it's easy to follow, and you do a good job internally signposting those points. You've got the one example that you talk about. By the way, it's pronounced Baki, but that's okay, not a big deal. But like I said, the problem with the case is that it basically determined that quotas are against the law, they're unconstitutional, so nobody's using quotas anymore. So what are the affirmative action policies that you were talking about that create these problems that you say exist? That's what it needs to be contemporized on those issues. I like the statistical information that you present after 209 about the enrollment and the graduation rates at the different UC systems. However, it does seem it's kind of isolated. You're talking about the proposition passing in 1996. You know, we are a few years past that. I don't know what the data is over the years. I suspect that the data that you presented is relatively fresh after the original passage. I'm not sure if it reviews information from the past 15 years on that subject, and I think that would be something that wouldn't be that hard to find information on. You do cite the sources, but not always completely. The date, for instance, is one of those things that I think we need to get on that. The generalization on the third point is based on this kind of metaphor that the bake sale deals with, and it's an interesting metaphor that you're trying to reason from. The problem is that's all you've got there, and there's no demonstration that anybody feels belittled because they got an opportunity as a result of affirmative action. If you had the testimony of somebody that might be in one of those preferred categories who feels that they got a leg up and that wasn't fair, or that if there were employers who judged somebody harshly and thought, well, the only reason they got into dental school or to medical school or whatever is because they fit in these particular categories, and they were perceived negatively by others as a consequence, that would be the kind of information that would support that conclusion. You're just basing it on, this stunt that the college Republicans at Berkeley had. We'll discount the cupcakes or the cookies based on whatever category it is, and it's similar to that. But I don't know. I got to be honest. If I was in one of those groups, I don't know how demeaned I'd feel by the sale. I'd feel like, ha, I'm getting 4 cupcakes for $1, and you aren't. So you're making an inference that they're going to be perceiving it in a negative way, but you need to show us that that's the way they would be perceiving it. All right. Thank you.